Welcome to PAATH History. Today we are going to discuss about the trade and economic crisis in Rome. Due to the crisis in the slave mode of production, the government resorted to short-term solutions like debasement coinage to meet its growing financial commitments. In the long run, such solutions undermined the entire economy. The silver denarius had been devalued by 15% under Trajan. Marcus Aurelius further devalued the denarius by 6%. By the mid-3rd century CE, the denarius had been reduced to 5% of the value it had at the beginning Principate. Diocletian and Constantine did attempt to reform the currency, but they were not very successful. The supply of gold and silver had become more or less static by the end of the 2nd century CE. As a result of debasement of coinage during the last quarter of the 3rd century CE, there was a 1000% rise in overall price levels. For the state, it was a matter of worry that soldiers and government servants could no longer live on the salaries they received. It was not feasible to go on increasing the rate of taxation beyond a certain point. Diocletian experimented with state regulation of prices. In CE 302, the emperor issued an edict which fixed prices for nearly 900 commodities. This attempt was unsuccessful for the simple reason that the state had virtually no control over production and distribution. Eventually, by the 4th century CE, the government began paying salaries in kind in the form of rations of food and clothing. This development discouraged monetary exchange and reinforced the tendency towards local and regional self-sufficiency, which was already visible by the end of the 3rd century CE. The monetary crisis was just one of the factors which contributed to the decline of trade in the latter Roman Empire. When we speak of trade in the context of the Roman Empire, we should not forget that long-distance trade was mainly in luxury goods. Agricultural produce and handicrafts were routinely sold in local markets. Unfortunately, our knowledge about the precise manner in which the surplus produce was converted into money or precious metal, which could then be exchanged by the aristocracy for luxury goods, is inadequate. The Roman social formation was highly exploitative, and it has been estimated that the wealth of the senatorial oligarchy in the 3rd century CE was nearly 5 times what it had been in the 1st century CE. The conspicuous consumption that they indulged in sustained long-distance trade in luxury goods. In the early Principate, the oligarchy was concentrated in the city of Rome or in the principal Italian towns. Their wealth flowed into these cities. What is more, the Mediterranean was the geographical center of the Roman economy, and all major towns were located on or very close to the coastline. The unification of the Mediterranean under Roman rule and the establishment of Pax Romana had given a boost to long-distance seaborne trade. Transport charges for carrying goods from Alexandria to Rome by sea were roughly 25 times less than covering the same distance by land. The farther away one moved from the Mediterranean, the more expensive inland transport became. The Romans did possess excellent and well-maintained highways which facilitated the administrative unification of their empire. The construction of these highways had commenced in the late Republic. The Via Appia, which connected Rome to southern Italy, was begun in 312 BCE, and the last stretch of this major highway was completed only in the time of the Crassus brothers. Then there was the Via Aemilia, which was the main highway to Cisalpine Gaul. Other important highways were the Via Domitia linking Italy to Spain and the Via Egnatia, which ran from Rome to Damascus. In addition to these, there were provincial roads which joined provincial capitals to outlying territories. Roman highways were primarily used for military and administrative purposes. The relative backwardness of road transport technology made overland transport commercially unviable. In the Republican period, the port of Ostia, situated at the distance of 16 miles from Rome at the mouth of the Tiber, was the port town which served the capital. Ostia developed into a major port and naval base with traffic from all over the Mediterranean converging upon it. Towards the end of the Republic, the silting of the port necessitated a shift to a new harbor located 2 miles north of Ostia. The new harbor was named Portus. The prosperity of Ostia or Portus was directly linked to the status of Rome as the foremost center of consumption in the Mediterranean. What needs to be emphasized is the parasitic nature of the city of Rome. Apart from the imperial court, the oligarchy, government officials, and praetorian guards, there was a large section of unproductive poor inhabitants who lived on free grain distribution. Rome was more of a center of consumption than of production, and the trade of Ostia was essentially a one-way traffic. By the 3rd century CE, the aristocracy was no longer interested in residing at Rome or in its vicinity and moved to estates in the countryside of Italy, Gaul, and Spain. This speeded up the decentralization of economic activity and made the country seats of the oligarchy self-sufficient economic units. This resulted in the decay of long-distance trade, especially in the West. A related development was the economic advance of the northern regions of Western Europe. Considering that these areas were located at a great distance from the southern coastline of Europe, they had never been integrated with the economic activity of the Mediterranean Sea. We can therefore see that trade and monetary exchange was not essential to the new type of economy which was developing in several parts of the empire. In any case, we must be careful not to overrate the importance of trade in the Roman economy even when the empire was at its peak. Exchange would have been localized in nature, and except for the luxury sector, we are really dealing with petty commodity production. This was also true of most of the provincial urban centers, which procured whatever they required from their neighborhood, from a surrounding area lying on an average within a radius of 30 miles. The big latifundia themselves had stimulated economic self-sufficiency, especially when they were situated at some distance from major centers of habitation. When landowners permanently settled in the countryside and in a situation where trade had declined, estates tended to become even more self-sufficient. It was one type of decentralization and also a reason behind the crisis of the empire. So this is the end of our today's discussion. Please subscribe our channel, like our video and comment. Listen to our podcast episodes. Follow our official Facebook page, Twitter handle and Instagram. For any query, feel free to mail us. For details, see the description.